The man known as the father of Pakistan's nuclear weapons program has died. Abdul Qadeer Khan died in hospital in Islamabad of COVID-19. Thousands of people attended his state funeral yesterday. Many in Pakistan viewed him as a hero. But Khan was a controversial figure in the West. The U.S. accused him of selling nuclear technology to Iran, Libya, and North Korea. Authorities in Pakistan placed him under house arrest back in 2004. He was released in 2009, but security services continued to restrict his movements for the rest of his life. Khan was 85. Sajan Gohel is the International Security Director for the Asia Pacific Foundation. We've reached him today in London. Sajan, always a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you, Natasha. Happy Thanksgiving to you and to everyone in Canada.
Thank you so much, and happy Thanksgiving to you, friend. So let's talk about Abdul Qadeer Khan, because I think when this man passed away, half the world said, wow, my God, he's gone. And the other half of the world said, who? So I think for those who are not familiar with AQ Khan, put into context what he meant for the nuclear program in Pakistan specifically.
Well, AQ Khan is the father of Pakistan's nuclear weapons program. This is the man who, from the 1970s, was assigned the role to create this program, which has attracted a lot of controversy over the decades because, yes, Pakistan became a nuclear power, but one of the challenges and the problems that for counter proliferation was the fact that AQ Khan was also selling that nuclear know-how to countries like Iran, North Korea, and Libya. Under AQ Khan, his network was known effectively as the nuclear Walmart, which just shows you the significance and the controversy that he had created.
So we've been discussing that he was seen as a national hero, but also that he was placed under house arrest and he was monitored for the rest of his life by the Pakistani authorities. Why did they arrest him?
Well, much of this came from a covert operation that was being conducted by the CIA and the British intelligence agency MI6, who were in negotiations with the Gaddafi regime in the post 9/11 era. And the Libyans revealed that nuclear technology had actually been greatly assisted by AQ Khan himself. Now, Pakistan was supposed to be an ally in the war on terrorism. And for the US, this was putting them in a very difficult situation because on the one hand, Pakistan was supposed to be supporting the US in its counterterrorism efforts. And on the other hand, it was actually contributing to proliferation efforts. AQ Khan, in many ways, was the fall guy for that, because it's very difficult to believe he was acting on his own. When you're talking about a military regime under General Pervez Musharraf that was controlling Pakistan, it's hard to conceive that somehow Musharraf and the military would not have known what AQ Khan was up to.
That's so interesting you bring up the point that he might have been made the scapegoat for this larger thing that was happening in Pakistan, and you just pinpoint him. And certainly the U.S. jumped on that because a former CIA director described AQ Khan as dangerous as Osama bin Laden to international security. Was that a fair assessment in your mind?
Well, when it comes to nuclear proliferation, yes, it's a very fair assessment because the damage that his activities have created, the world is a less safe place. When you have a nuclear scientist that is effectively selling weaponry material or the know-how to create a nuclear weapon to countries that are designated as state sponsors of terrorism, Libya under the Gaddafi regime, Iran, and North Korea. And the other concerning aspect, Natasha, is we don't necessarily know the full depths of what AQ Khan was actually doing. We only know about these three countries. There's been rumors about Syria and other countries too. And one of the problems has been that no one's been allowed to interview AQ Khan. As you mentioned, he was kept under house arrest after these revelations. And no one from the IEA or the US or any other country was able to interrogate him to just see how much wider his network potentially was.
How much of this was about a sort of loyalty to certain states, an Islamic organization working together, and how much of this was him just trying to become famous or wealthy?
In many ways, it was a combination of all of that. There was an ideological component where He saw his mission to help countries like Libya and Iran and assist them. There was also the financial motivation, which is why he was willing to sell that technology to North Korea. But again, it goes back to the fact he would not have been able to do this without the military actually supporting and encouraging this, especially under General Pervez Musharraf. And it's kind of worrying, Natasha, if you look at Pakistan today, that the military still retains a huge amount of control and influence. And many in the West are often worried that would these nuclear weapons fall into the wrong hands. But the irony here is that it is the military that controls it. And if anything, it may already be in the wrong hands with a military that doesn't necessarily see eye to eye with the West, especially if we look at what's happening in neighboring Afghanistan and how the military have been enabling elements of the Taliban, including the designated Haqqani network.
This might be an impossible question, Sajjan, but how much more dangerous is our planet, our world, because of AQ Khan?
Well, we are unfortunately still facing the consequences of AQ Khan's activities. Look at North Korea, who constantly threaten nuclear blackmail whenever they want concessions from the West. That is a legacy of AQ Khan's support for North Korea's program. Iran also has, there are many elements within the Iranian regime that also have a desire to have a nuclear weapons program, which puts Iran at loggerheads with Israel, creating further tensions. And then there are also other nuclear scientists from Pakistan, Natasha, that were aiding al-Qaeda, who were seeking nuclear weapons. So unfortunately, there are a lot of problems that have come out of this desire for Pakistan to have a nuclear weapons program. And perhaps it's a sad ending to AQ Khan's life that he was pretty much then ignored by the government of Imran Khan,
who hailed him as a hero yesterday during the funeral services. But it's a complicated legacy. Sajjan, thank you so much for helping us unpack it.
My pleasure. Good talking to you.
Sajjan Gohel is the International Security Director for the Asia Pacific Foundation.